Hey, so radiating compassion, kindness, and love, and doing that is the only thing that you put out into the world. It's a great idea and a great goal to work toward. And if it's not something that you've worked on, it's easy to see how that could seem like something that would be impossible to do, or, at least highly unlikely for you to be able to make happen. And it is a process to get to a point where you're radiating mostly kindness, compassion, and love, and even making an improvement of, radiating those things 20% of the time. If you're at 10, 30, 40, 50, work your way up to 100%. And it really has to start with noticing how you're reacting to the things that go on around you, because we can only control ourselves. We can't control how other people behave. We can't control, the environment around us. We can only control how we respond to it. And the first thing to do then is to notice what things are bringing an emotional response, eliciting an emotional response, and what that response is. Once you get accustomed to noticing those things that create an emotional reaction and the emotion that comes along, especially those things that are negative, that, anger, dislike, things that make you have, thoughts that aren't along the lines of compassion, kindness, and love. If it's something that makes you hate or makes you ambivalent or not care, you want to start taking note of what those things are. And then you have to do some real reflection once you notice what's going on and what's eliciting those, emotional responses within yourself. You take and you figure, you want to look and see, how can I take these emotional responses and process them around in a way that allows me to radiate compassion, kindness, and love. A lot of what that has to do with goes back to integrating compassion, kindness, and love into that situation. For example, if you're driving down the highway and somebody cuts you off, that can be really irritating. It can elicit some, negative emotional responses, and it can, kind of create a feeling where you might, have some negative thoughts toward the person that did that. And it could be something that you carry along, and either, the way that you drive around somebody else, you behave in the same way that the other person did, or, maybe you're just irritated and still taking up real estate in your mind. And when you go to interact with somebody at, store or restaurant, or perhaps even a family member, it can come through because you're still carrying that negativity. And, a good way to reframe that is to remember to show people, that unconditional love and compassion, and understanding that each person's coming from a unique point of view. So, or a unique perspective, just because of all their different life experiences. So when you have something happen where somebody's, treated you in a way that makes you feel bad, a good way to start mitigating through that is, you had the thing happen, you have your negative response, and then you want to think about, well, what could I be missing in this situation that if I knew it, I wouldn't have a negative response? So the person that cuts you off in traffic, maybe they're on their way to a really important job interview and they've been unemployed for a while and they need this job and they don't want to be late because, I know as a manager that somebody's late for their interview, that doesn't speak well to the prospect of them getting a job, because if that's the face they're putting forward for the interview, how are they going to be when it's actually time to do work and show up on time for work? So maybe that's going on. Maybe they're trying to get to an emergency situation. A loved one could be hurt or injured. Somebody could be having, something going on at the hospital, and they're trying to get there quickly and not really paying attention to what's going on around them and forgetting that everybody, that their actions have an impact on other people. I know that I've had that happen, and I'm sure that, hopefully most of you can relate to that we've all been in a situation where we've been so focused on our destination that we forget about, the journey that we're taking on the way and the people that we encounter along the way as well. So reframing what's going on and giving the person the benefit of the doubt. Oh, you know what? Maybe they were in a hurry to get somewhere. Maybe their mind's on something else, as unfortunate as it is today, it may not be that their mind was on something else. They could have literally been distracted with their phone. Not that makes it okay. Just now you understand what was going on. And, the other thing is, you want to hope that person figures out how to fix their own behavior before something bad happens. And that's another form of compassion and kindness and love, is you don't want to see somebody else or another person get injured or hurt. So when somebody does something that's unsafe or unkind, just, one of the things that I've said to, my wife a few times is when I observe people doing things on the road that aren't safe is, well, it worked, but it only works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, that's when that person's going to have, their own new round of headaches that they're going to have to work with. So you can have compassion for them just in going, I really hope that person figures out, a better way or a safer way to conduct themselves, or a nicer way or a kinder way, before that leads them to, further difficulties down the line. The whole idea with radiating compassion and kindness and love, and doing that as often as possible, if you take and look at the flip side of it, which tends to happen more often than those that are radiating the compassion, kindness, and love, or at least they seem to stick out more. And when you're doing that, we're each really mirrors for one another, in that what we tend to put out, we tend to get back from those that are around us. So if we're kind to them, we tend to get kindness back. A few weeks back, I was chatting with one of my coworkers, and I had to go and talk to one of the forklift operators. Well, I didn't have to do it, but it was getting close to time for us to get the trucks unloaded, and they had moved all their equipment out of the way from our unloading area. And, I went in to talk to the forklift driver, who I've been there several times, know him really well. And I go in, and he sees me, and he has this kind of like look on his face that I couldn't quite place. And then he was like, what do you want? And I just wanted to know if he was ready for us to pull up. And he's like, well, actually, he said, what do you want? It's not, today's not off to a good start. And what I feel like I saw on his face was, initially he wanted to express that, displeasure that the day wasn't going very well. And when he saw me, I'm always nice. I'm always kind, polite. So when you see somebody who's always nice, it's really hard to be mean to that person, because they haven't really given you a reason to treat them that way. And since I came in there and I was, being respectful and kind to the space and to him, and just, wanted to make sure that I was, doing the best that I could to make his day, as easy as possible. And that's how I conduct myself every time I'm there. He was, very, he wasn't able to really put that negativity out, because there were, we're people. We treat each other. You have somebody that's nice, you treat them nice. It's very hard to treat a nice person in a mean way. So focus on seeing what those, and when you see people that get, are mean to each other, somebody makes you angry, it makes it that much easier for you to be angry at the next person. And especially if you're both having a bad day, well, now you can really just start bouncing your anger off of each other. And that's why taking notice of, how different things affect you, taking notice of your own emotional state, and then making sure that you don't allow that negativity to be put out onto other people. It's exponentially powerful in the same way as the negativity is. It just bounces off and just keeps growing. Well, when you put that positivity out, it does the same thing. It bounces off, it grows. And especially when you look at that in the perspective of negativity, that negativity goes, but if you don't bounce it back, it dies there. And if you put positivity out to that person, if you're being compassionate, kind, and loving, when that person, even if they're angry, if all you give them back is that kindness, compassion, and love, eventually it's exhausting to be negative and to be that riled up. But I could be compassionate and kind and loving to somebody all day. It has the opposite effect. Instead of being draining, it's energizing to be positive and to be happy and to, show kindness to other people. So you can do that limitlessly. A person eventually runs out of energy to be angry. That's where the if you've done customer service, which I've done a lot of. I was in the entertainment industry for 20 plus years, and many of which as a manager. And when you have somebody who's, upset about an event or a party or something that's going on, the worst thing you can do, we all see, they cliche it in movies all the time, is be like, tell someone to calm down. And that just gets them going even more. But eventually, an angry person, burns themselves out. So after they get done yelling and screaming and being irate, especially if you're just kind and courteous and listen and show some compassion, eventually they get down to a state, and that's when you can actually start talking to someone and having a good conversation. That's why radiating the compassion and the kindness and the love is so important, because it de-escalates your situation and it allows for open communication. So I hope this helps you be able to work toward getting to that point where all you're radiating is compassion, kindness, and love. And know that if you're not, or if you feel like you're not doing it all the time, when you start processing this stuff and thinking about it internally, don't count being angry or upset or frustrated, as long as those thoughts leave your mind within 15 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Perhaps when you're first starting out, try to have those things flushed out within a minute. And slowly you'll find they take up less real estate as you get more accustomed to viewing those things around you from the lens of compassion, kindness, and love, giving people benefit of the doubt, assuming that their intent is positive, or at least that they weren't intentionally being negative or intentionally doing something to hurt you. When you start looking at it that way, it becomes easier, as you start noticing them, it becomes easier for you to, reframe it and look at it from that light. And as you're becoming more skilled at doing that, you'll find that anger also, or those frustrations when you have those interactions with people or just, objects, it's not uncommon for an inanimate object to be able to influence your mood. Say a truck breaks down, or a car gets a flat tire or won't start. All those things can build inside you, and they're not always as easy to flip around. But I talk mostly about working with other people, because that's the greatest impact that you can have, and they can usually be the most challenging. A car breaks down, it breaks down. And if you make sure that you're able to frame those things, get rid of the frustration within 15 seconds, that doesn't count. You're radiating a little bit of anger or hostility or frustration for 15 seconds while you process the information. That's really good. Some people may get down to the point where it just passes through their mind like a fleeting thought. So that's really what you want to do. Start out by focusing on identifying the things that put you in a situation or an emotional state where you feel like you can't be compassionate, loving, and kind, and radiate that to those around you. Once you get good at identifying those situations and taking control of your own reaction and response to the situation. Well, once you get good at identifying them, next you want to work on controlling your response and your actions. And then you want to remember to make sure that you're giving less and less real estate, less and less time and energy to those, frustration and negative aspects, the thoughts that are going through your mind. And as work on getting those down. If you can get them down to 15 seconds, you're good at I would say, for me personally, if it's gone within 15 seconds, I don't count it. And I'm hoping to get even better to where they are is just a fleeting thought. Somebody does something, and a lot of times I can do that, but there are other times that it's not quite as easy. So good luck in your journey. Hope you enjoy the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I look forward to talking again with you soon.